Picture the average marriage in 1840. What comes to mind? Rigid gender roles, focus on class and money, mutual tolerance. While this character may prove true to some degree, a public facing marriage, the marriage of the most famous couple in the world at the time, served as a model for the ideal 19th century marriage while turning the Victorian world on its head. Hi, I'm Sadie, a sophomore English and Women's and Gender Studies double major, and today I'm here to tell you about how the world changed in 1840, the year Queen Victoria married Prince Albert. On February 10th, 1840, Queen Victoria and Prince Albert solidified their union in a ceremony at the Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace in London. The two shared a 21-year love story that would simultaneously redefine and reinforce the social conventions of Victorian England. The media landscape of the era used the couple's dynamic to shape the modern marriage and eventually the nuclear family. Although the royal marriage inherently challenged the gender dynamics of 19th century England, Victoria and Albert strove to actively promote traditional familial values, modeling the ideal union for England. However, the duality of the Queen's status as both wife and monarch invited Victorians to reconsider the rigidity of conventional gender roles. Some media depicted Victoria as the traditional 19th century bride, like in this 1840 engraving by Sir George Hayter, who depicted the royal wedding. Look, you can even see him in the lower right corner. Hayter painted the two as the quintessential Victorian couple. Victoria embodies the submissive virginal bride with her small stature and simple floral headpiece. Although Victoria held extreme power, her representation as a smitten bride and devoted wife, simultaneously acting as the focal point of the etching, yet taking up very little space, portrays her as subservient and docile. Other media emphasized the progressive nature of the marriage, like in Jas Montgomery's Marriage Hymn on the Marriage of Queen Victoria, which was a poem published in The New Yorker on December 26, 1840. Montgomery declares the two fitly paired, highlighting the love connection of the match, describing the wedding as the union of two hearts. Although the Victorian period marked a rise in companionate marriages, Victoria and Albert's public facing union demonstrated the desirable quality of marrying for love rather than convenience or money, a luxury many Victorians could not afford, as, for some working and all middle class women, marriage was an economic necessity or at least the best means of improving their status. The royal match presented marriage not only as a social necessity, but also a fulfilling component of a complete and content life. Still others clung to the conventional elements of the marriage. Another poem, published in the Southern Literary Messenger in March of 1840, stressed the reproductive role of a wife, neglecting Victoria's status and unconventional position. The end of the first stanza bids Victoria good tidings for her marriage, saying, "I wish thee health and many sons and daughters." Although Victoria bore the burden of acting as both sovereign and physical producer of heirs, the poem's assumption of her role as the traditional wife attempts to confine her to the identity of a reproductive unit rather than the most powerful monarch in the world, underscoring the social pressures of the Victorian era to conform to social standards. Some media could not constrain their relationship to purely conventional or progressive, demonstrating how Victoria balanced a dual identity in her role as both wife and monarch of the most powerful empire in the world. In her declaration of love to Parliament, in which she stated, "The marriage will at once secure my domestic felicity and serve the interests of my country," Victoria addresses her responsibility to her country and her role as a monarch, noting how her marital bliss will better serve her as a leader and be most acceptable to all her loving subjects. An article by the Spirit of the Times affirms this ideal of marriage as providing domestic felicity, commenting, "Albert will arrive to constitute the domestic happiness and sustain the social virtues of the illustrious lady." This line underscores the significance of the royal marriage as a model for England as it sustains social virtues, emphasizing the social and cultural necessity of marriage and the preservation of the nuclear family. Despite her immense power and influence for a woman in her era, Victoria herself encouraged the perpetuation of traditional marriage roles. The American Masonic described Victoria and Albert's marriage rites, noting Victoria's agreement to obey Albert, perfectly playing the part of the conventional bride. "Victoria, wilt thou obey Albert and serve him so long as you both shall live?" Her Majesty looked up affectionately in Prince Albert's face and replied, loud enough to be heard in every part of the chapel, "I will." Victoria's willingness to include obey and serve, and the enthusiasm with which she swore to these terms, highlights the repressive and gendered nature of Victorian marriages. Her submission to social norms, despite her rank and responsibilities, demonstrated that she too answered to gender roles and the authority of her husband. Another piece, written by Christian Watchman, highlights Victoria's compliance with social expectations, commenting on the prevalence of virginal white during the ceremony, a commitment to sexual purity. If Victoria and Albert's companionate marriage that upheld Victorian social norms while also breaking down traditional gender roles intrigues you, go check out some modern media that depicts their relationship. The Young Victoria from 2009, Victoria, which ran from 2016 to 2019, and Victorian Albert from 2001 are just some examples of Victorian Albert in film and TV that explore their relationship, with varying levels of accuracy, of course. Be sure to account for the tendency for Hollywood to dramatize history for entertainment value as you watch these films, and think about the ways in which their relationship is portrayed as dynamic and revolutionary or traditional and stifling.